Labvakar, klātesošie! Man prieks jūs redzēt tik kuplā skaitā, pārstāvēt principā visi kursi ir, jo šodien mums lasa lekciju cilvēks, kas ir bijis iesaistīts mūsu programmā no 2007. gada. Tas ir gads, kad pirmie absolventi, respektīvi pirmie studenti tiek uzņemti jauno mediju programmā, un Robs palīdzēja šīs jauno mediju programmas veidā gan ar savu ekspertīzi, ar savu pieredzi, ar saviem kontaktiem un ar savu laiku, jā, ar visu savu būtību. Un kopš 2007. gada viņš strādā pie mums par lektoru, reizēm atbraucot un nolasot lekcijas, parasti tie vecākie kursi. Un man prieks, ka šo gadu laikā Robs ir kļuvis par sesto nozīmīgāko cilvēku pasaulē lietu interneta jomā, un tas arī ir viņa būtībā jā, pasaulē tāds jau pasaules mēroga eksperts. Robs ir autors šai nelielai grāmatiņai, kas mums ir, kas saucās Lietu internets, The Internet of Things, kas stāv dzeltenajā plauktiņā, ja, tā kā liekat aiz auss, tur jūs varat šo te grāmatiņu atrast. Un tāpat viņš lasa lekcijas arī citās augstskolās, bet galvenokārt darbojas kā eksperts. Kā eksperts tieši lietu interneta jomā pasaulē, konsultējot uzņēmumus un cilvēkus par to, kā mums ierast darbā, kā mums pieņemt šos te jaunos lietu internetu vai gudro lietu spēles apstākļus. Un par to Robs, es domāju, runās arī šodien. Tā kā, ja jums pēc tam ir jautājumi, izmantojiet šo iespēju un varat ar viņu padiskutēt. Varbūt šie jautājumi ir, varbūt jums šķiet naivi, varbūt asi, bet droši uzdodat, izmantojiet šo iespēju, tad Robs ir šeit uz vietas. Tā, un lekcija būs angļu valodā, vai ne? Jūs saprotat. Okay, Rob, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Santa. And so I'm going to talk for about an hour or so, I think. And after that we can have some discussion. And I'm going to start by basically showing five pictures or 5 stories. This is the first. And it's interesting because I think that let's drop it. But so you see these? Anybody has a clue about who these are, or what this is? What we are looking at? What we are seeing?
Music instruments.
Yeah. It's called shakubashi music. And what is this? Protection. Oh, okay. And so what do we see?
Nothing.
Well, nothing, I would say. So what do we see? What is this?
A basket.
Yes, it's a basket, and they're wearing it on their heads. And so what we are seeing are the Fukeshu, and the Fukeshu once 1600 were samurai, but they had no master, so they were ronin, and ronin could not have swords, and they could basically also not exist. You as a samurai, you had to have a master. But they were masterless samurai, ronin, and they did 5 or 6 things. First thing they did was that they bought a building next to a temple, and they lived in there for quite some time. And then a second thing they did was they put on these baskets, and they redesigned their sword. They could no longer have a sword, so this shakubashi flute was also a club, so they could fight with it. And then they went to the shogun, who was then called Edo, and they said, "We are ronin, we are coming from China. We had a priest there called Fosan, and they all made it up. And basically at the end they said, so we would like to stay here and beg in the streets and play music and beg for alms." So the shogun said, "Okay, you can do that, but you have to then spy for me. So you go into town, you hear a lot of things, you listen, you spy. For me, you play back what you hear, and then you can do this." And they said okay, and they did it. And they've been doing this for quite some time. Of course, not going into the streets, begging for money, playing that back to the Japanese authorities now, but the shakubashi music is still there. And the fukeshu, the practice is still there. But for me, when I saw that, or when you see this, you see a man with a basket on his head, with a mask. But if you take away that mask, you think that something truthful is there, that something else is there. But basically, if you read this story backwards, there is nothing. There is just a bunch of guys making up a story, going to buy a temple, buy a building next to a temple, so people believe they're part of the temple. Then they go to the shogun with a fake story, and he basically knows, I think it's a fake story, but he wants to keep these people a bit happy, so he says, okay, you can sort of do this. So basically, reading the story backwards is like this Nietzsche saying, eine Maske, gib mir eine Maske mehr. You take away the mask, but there's always another mask, basically. And for me, this was a very important story, because it shows that basically the object is always empty. We always seem to think we want to go for the truth, or for something, or for like the beginning, and or sort of the notion of the beginning. Something happens, and we take away this and this, and if we look really, really good, there's got to be something there. But basically, there's nothing there. There's a story that you can make up. For me, that was very important. Realization that everything is made. We all make it. And so if we want to make it, we can do a lot of things. The second story is Botany Bay, Australia, and you see the Endeavour. Captain Cook was sailing his Endeavour into Botany Bay. This is 16 something. And there were Aborigines, and they were fishing. And when Captain Cook has sailed his boat to Haiti, the Haitians flew at the boat immediately. But the Aborigines just kept on fishing. They just did nothing. So they see this big boat, and they are here sort of fishing, and they don't look up, they don't do anything. And Cook gets a little bit worried, because he's not used to people reacting like this, or not reacting at all to his boat. But for the Aborigines, on their fishing boats, being in dream time, the ship was too big to be a boat, so they thought it was an island. And if it is an island, you can sort of let it drift. You don't have to worry about it. You just don't care about it. It just will pass. And the moment that Captain Cook is lowering a small boat, that's when the Aborigines go and hit, and go and fight and attack the boat. And to me, this story was also very important, because it shows that shifts can be so big that you can totally miss them, because they are simply not on your radar, or they're so different that they're not in a category in which you look, or to which you look, and in which you expect changes. The change may be so huge or so strange that you don't notice it. And that's basically what I'm going to talk about today with this Internet of Things, is that it's such a massive technological shift that we are all reacting to the gadgets. So we are reacting to the smartphones, to the wearables, to all the things happening in the smart home, the good night lamp, or all these things, the washing machine with an internet address, the connected car, the smart city application, sort of all these things. We're reacting to all these things, we're seeing all these things happening, but what's happening is actually a huge shift in how we are dealing with technology, and that shift is on the magnitude of that boat. The third story is about Blanqui. Blanqui was a revolutionary around 1850, 1860, in maybe a bit earlier in France, in Paris. And Blanqui was a revolutionary, so we had a lot of soldiers, but he couldn't see his soldiers because he could not march them in public. So what he did, or what at one point his lieutenant came up with as an idea, was that he would be in a taillerie in the park, and he would be sort of leaning against a tree, and his men would be in the park, but they would be dressed as Sunday strollers, so they would walk around sort of like as if they were having a good time in the park. And as they passed the tree, they would start marching, so that Blanqui could actually effectively have a parade of his men, of his soldiers. And I found that a fascinating idea because this shift takes place sort of in the body. So you have so the guys are walking, and all of a sudden they start marching, and it's very difficult to know when this change is taking place. So basically, I think you cannot pinpoint that change. So you're strolling, or you are then marching. But it is shifting somehow, and you know that it is shifting, but you cannot really pinpoint the very moment that this change is taking place. And that's very strange, because it is happening, it is there, but we know it's happening, but it's basically impossible to know exactly when that moment is there. And this is also very human, it's very related to us, so we are constantly looking for these moments of change. We might forget that we're in one. We might not even recognize that we're in one or that we are doing one, because we're constantly looking for this moment of change. But actually catching that very moment is very difficult, maybe even undoable. So that's the third story. The fourth story is basically this. It's Bernard Chouet, and he locked himself into a room with hundreds and thousands of these things. And these things are readings coming from seismographs. And for centuries, now not centuries, but for maybe slightly under a century, hundreds, thousands of volcano researchers looked at these charts. And what they tried to do was they tried to get information out of this data. But they could not get any information out of this data. And they tried theory after theory after theory after theory, perspective after perspective after perspective, but nothing came. And then Bernard Chouet, who was a physicist, locking himself into the room with all of these charts, found out that the data is not in this line, but the data is actually in this line. So these volcano seismograph charts always had a big line with chunks of readings like this, and then a very small line. And for 50 years, 60 years, the volcanologists thought that the data was in this line, and actually it was in this line. But it took somebody from a completely different view, a physicist, to actually come up with this idea of that, hey, maybe the data is not there, but the data may be here, so the information is also here. And he had a theory, and he based it on this line that is actually working. And so with his theory, it's more easy to predict volcano outbursts because of his vision based on this line. And again, for me, it was really important to see this, because sometimes you think, it's a bit strange. It's like 100 people, and they all think everything is black. But I think it's white. But there are 100 of them. I'm just alone. So probably they're right, and it's black, and I'm wrong. But that might not be the case. So it can still be the case, as it was here, that we have hundreds of researchers, thousands of researchers, for a very, very long time, looking at the same charts, and then still missing the fact that the information is in this line and not in that line. So I think it shows that even if you're up against a whole group of people that thinks that things are like this, it's still not said that they actually are like that. And the last story is Bastiaan Ader, and it's this picture that I really that I would like to show. So Bastiaan Ader is basically our best Dutch performance artist. and he had, if you Google for images or pictures or movies, you find some of his movies. He's crying all the time. He's really something like that. Starts crying. He just doesn't stop. It's really. He's then also falling off houses, so climbing on top of houses and then sort of falling off the house, which is also very good. This is one of his last images. So we lost him at sea. So he's out there somewhere. Nobody knows where he is. Probably he's been dead for quite some time. So a long time ago, he had the idea to go to America in a boat, in that little boat, and in Holland at the seaside there was a music like folk music, Dutch folk music, playing with brass bands, waving him out. And the idea was that when he would land at the American seaside, that there would be American folk music and brass bands sort of welcoming him in. But he never made it. So we lost him at sea, and probably he and his boat are gone. But what I really would like to talk about is this image. And these are stills from a movie. And he's on his bike here, and he just is coming down the bridge. And instead of just going straight, or instead of being scared and fall into the canal, he drives his bike straight into the canal. So he's coming from down here, and then he goes here, and then he just goes straight into the canal, just as if that's the most normal thing to do. And the beauty of his action here is that it's like the same with this Blanqui moment. So there's two things happening, and something happens in between. So this changing moment is that you either drive straight on your bike on the road, or you fall and you go like this into the canal, like I'm falling. But he doesn't do that. So he decides to go straight into the canal like that. And what he's doing here, he's creating a kind of third way. He's creating a kind of third option that was not there before, because nobody has done that like him before. And with this, he's basically creating all these moments that are sort of open, that you can actually decide about these moments. And of course, this was maybe one of his lesser thought-through projects. But yeah, we never know. Maybe he will surface someday. I'm not really sure. I don't think so. So basically, he's out on his boat. So those were basically the stories that I would like to tell, and basically all these stories are sort of moments of the possible, of the real, of something that can happen. So they always deal with creating new situations or seeing all kinds of possibilities in an existing situation. And so to make a long story short, what I've been sort of investigating, I think, all my life, or what a lot of what I've been seeing, is that the world we are living in now has been taken over fully by an intelligence, by kind of engineering intelligence, that is only looking at every existing situation as in 100% being that existing situation, not implying any sort of way out of that situation. So just going back a long time to the tools I'm not sure if this is the right. Yeah, I think this is it.
Von Aristoteles wird berichtet, dass er hin und her wandelnd im Schatten geht.
Well, we don't really have to sort of, but so basically, so let's go back a long time. Let's go back to the caves. So we're in the caves. We're sort of tribes, and we need to do things. So what we do is we take rocks and we make these rocks into hammers. And so these hammers, they become tools. And we as people, as human beings, we make tools. And at one point we are surrounded by a set of tools. Heidegger, the philosopher on technology, who writes about techne, is thinking about this. He's thinking about this, the moment that this chisel becomes like a hammer. So that was the same moment, about the Blanqui moment or Bastian Adam moment, but that's the moment where this rock becomes the hammer. And Heidegger's been thinking about that moment, and for him, everything is still okay, as long as the energy that's in the rock is equal to the energy sort of that's in the hammer. But Heidegger is worried about the machine. So we get the Industrial Revolution, and as we get that, then the tools are no longer the same type of energy that we put in. In a machine, something is happening. So something is sort of lost in a machine, and something is won in a machine. So this machine is actually able to create such power that it can become so powerful that it can do the work of like 100 men, or it can pull the weight of so many people. But also something is happening in that machine. So it's no longer the energy that I put in is no longer equal to the energy that sort of goes out. It seems as if the machine is adding something, and it's gaining something, it's building something. Heidegger is worried about that, what is sort of left in the machine, or that is what is sort of what is growing, or that something that's happening, that is there, that we did not really put in. There's something happened in there. But this is still machines we talk about. So this is mechanical. We understand that. So he's already worried about the mechanical machine that we can, all of us here now, take apart and then put together again, and then it will still function, and we can put things up, or we can sort of we can make cool things. And now we are in a world full of software, and in this software world, so apart from after the Industrial Revolution, going into the software world, we are now already in a position that we have no clue what is going on in our software world, and we can only debug it with the same tools that they were made with. So I can only, if I do something in Java and try to sort of find out what's happening, I can only do that with Java, and sort of then see and find out sort of what's happening in there. So I've lost the ability to actually externally have a look at sort of what's going on in these machines that run software. So according to Heidegger, I would now have lost even more. So I lost the ability to actually know fully what's going on in this machine, but now I'm actually allowing myself to be in a world where I basically have no clue what is happening, or what is running where, or what is running what. Now, up until the Internet of Things, that is what we are going to talk about, this was still pretty much okay, maybe, because it was only happening in computers. So the software was running on his computer or on a smartphone, but they were actually quite visible. This is the computer, here's the software, and all the things that are happening are sort of basically happening in here. But now what is going to happen with this Internet of Things is that the software is going to be in your toothbrush, in your coffee machine, in your lamp, in your TV, in your washing machine, in your coffee, just in your car, everywhere. So everything that will have a little bit of power to hold a little bit of software will have basically a unique IP or internet address. So that's what we are well, that's basically our world. That's what we are living in. That's what's sort of happening. And what I've been really interested in sort of how is it possible that this is sort of happening so fast? How is it also possible that we react or basically do not react to this? So on the streets there's no real protest. Nobody's really protesting. All this connectivity, nobody's really, there's not very much debate in the newspapers, actually very little. There's no real sort of really hardcore group that says I'm going to disconnect and I'm going to go fully away from this or all of this. So it seems as if this is sort of happening, and we sort of also allow it to happen. Well, I think basically the reason why is that that going back to this tribe, which always consisted of different types of intelligences. I think one particular intelligence, which is this engineering intelligence, which is the mindset that wants things to be very clean, very clear, very efficient, very optimal. That this mindset is now fully sort of one. So there is not one story that you can make in any particular type of business that you want to sort of make it, that you cannot make without this being sort of the main story. We are now told that our cities should be smart. We also should be smart citizens. So at one point we have all kinds of wearables, and with these wearables we should make ourselves into sort of data sets. And we basically seem to believe and seem to think that that's also the way that we should go. That's the way that we should actually see things. So we are beginning to look at ourselves as very rational, efficient beings that need to be optimized to a certain extent, that need to be fully aware of all what they do, and so this is already sort of happening. But it has a history, and so although the Internet of Things as a sort of term is not it's not very recent. It was thought up around 2000 by Kevin Ashton. The whole notion of things being connected is about 40-50 years old. So in the West we talk about cybernetics, Norbert Wiener, Stafford Beer, and then from the 60s, 70s we talk about pervasive computing with IBM, and then in the 80s, 90s we talk about ubiquitous computing with Xerox Spark, and around 2000 we talk about ambient intelligence with Philips. And it's all about this. So it's all about the body being connected with smart gadgets, with the home, smart infrastructure, with the emergency response, with the nurse, with the hospital, with the technician and the doctor and the robots. And it's all about these images of people wearing a smart watch, having a smartphone, then being connected to the home, the car, the city, so basically sort of all these things. It's about cameras everywhere in the workspace, or in the way of the Philips smart home. You would be identified on the doormat, so the mat would be measuring your weight. So the moment that you enter an apartment, your weight is being measured, and so you're being identified. Or they would have infrared sensors over the sink, so you brush your teeth, and then everybody has a different height, so you identify the people in the family or people in the workplace by these types of measurements. But it would be the fact, and it already is the fact a little bit, that these sensors, all types of sensors, would be everywhere. That this ability to find where people and things are is everywhere. These things that used to be still like PowerPoint slides in the 70s and the 80s and also in the 90s. Because in the 90s, one thing was lacking, and that was the ability to store all the data. Because in order to actually do this, you need huge databases. And in order to have them, these databases need to be cheap. And in the 80s and the 90s, storage of data was very, very expensive. So you could not do all these things. So the things that what Google is doing now, or what Facebook is doing, storing all this video and all this data, that was really for YouTube would be totally impossible. But around 2000, something happens, and what happens is the cloud. And the cloud is this somehow a mythical array of thousands, hundreds of thousands of servers. So if you go to see the Google farms, you have massive, massive, massive warehouses full of computers, and they're being more being stored every day. And then of course there's something called virtualization and all kinds of mathematical formulas that are being performed on that. But basically around 2000 it becomes possible that we have this cloud, so we can get all this data up in the cloud and then be played back as scenarios on your smartphone or on a dashboard somewhere that somebody has, or to your body or to the robot. And that's basically what's been happening from 2000 on. So from 2000 on, all these ideas about connecting everything were basically only possible on a demo capability, but now they are getting real, and very real. So this basically means that what's happening now, or what is basically running now, it's this full-blown Internet of Things that we have now. And this Internet of Things basically it's quite simple. So you have a body area network where you have your body and all your wearables, like the Fitbits and the trackers and everything, and the smart T-shirts or the ambient hearing aid from Siemens, that if you walk with that in the city and there's a fire, then your device knows that the fire truck is coming, making noise, so it already starts dimming your earphone. So you basically no longer hear what's actually happening because of all the Twitter feeds from the fire department and all the data available in the area that this is happening. It's already filtering out that sound for you. And then you have the local area network where you have the home, and this is all about the smart home. So this, like I think 2 years ago I was at Internet of Things type of event here in Riga, and I think it was here again last year and again this year. And so that's where you find all the people who make sensors and machine to machine world of Riga there. And basically what they target is the home. And so they will make a smart home, and you will control your lamps with your smartphone, because your lamps have IP46. So your lamps are already basically running a very small computer that has an internet address, so you can put the lights on. Also, when you're not at home, you can do that. If you have a firewall in your home, you control the firewall, go to the lamps. The washing machine will have an Internet of Things address, because the idea is that you will run it on a smart grid, and the smart grid means that you will run it when the price of energy is lowest, and then your washing machine will simply start to wash when the energy is lowest. And of course you can still decide, I want to wash at 4 o'clock, but then you will pay a lot of money. So these are the kind of business models around it are basically all about leasing and basically all about data ownership. Then you have the wide area network, which is the telematics, or the car, which is like the connected car. Now the connected car, they have now their own conferences all across the globe. So in China and the States and Europe, there is the connected car conference. These are massive and huge, because the car is a hub of connectivity. And then you have the very wide area network, which is the smart city. So you have the smart city, you have smart mobility, you have the smart home, and you have the body. Now, if you look at, for example, what Google is doing, Google, like anybody else who wants to live in this space, has realized that if you want to be owning this Internet of Things, you have to be everywhere. Now, how can you be everywhere? You can be everywhere when you're in the links to all these networks. And you can call this a gateway. So these are gateways from one network into the other. So Google has a glass and a lens. So you have the Google Glass or the Google Lens, and all this data is going to the Google Cloud. And as you go home, you sync your data coming from your glass and your lens into the Google Power Meter. But the Power Meter did not really work, so they bought Nest. And they bought Nest, which is a smart thermostat, for $2 billion. So that woke everybody up. Google is buying a thermostat. Why is Google buying a smart thermostat? Nest. So the Nest is in the home, and it knows exactly what the other devices are doing. It knows what the washing machine is doing. It knows how much energy the coffee machine is sort of taking. It also knows who is home, who is not home. It knows the temperature in this room and the temperature in that room. And basically, it's kind of a smart dashboard for what's going on in the home. But I have my glass and my lens. So this data from my body that knows about how I sort of feel or what my body is doing, I go home and I sync it into this Nest, into this smart thermostat. So now the smart thermostat knows how I feel. And then I go to my car. Well, Google they have their own car. And they've been working on this car for quite some time. So the whole point about Google was never to be a search engine and then sort of get some advertising on that. Google was made by the same people who made the net. So the internet basically in the 80s, end of the 80s, TCP/IP, the protocol of the internet, was made by Vint Cerf and Bob Kahn. Vint Cerf went to work for Google in 2005, so he's now there for over a decade. Sort of already doing a lot of strategy, of course. And this has been the plan from the beginning. Vint Cerf and Bob Kahn wrote about no-bots in 1988. So they wrote about the entities that are also objects as organizational entities that are able to reflect upon themselves in 1988. Already, of course, in the context of this pervasive computing and ubiquitous computing, which was there. So this sort of plan is such a logical thing to do, that you want to be in all these gateways. So we have the glass and the lens, and of course there will become a sock, a smart sock or a smart t-shirt or a smart cap or all these things. And Google is so powerful here now that if you are making a smart cap, then you have to partner with Google or with somebody else, but you cannot make it on your own anymore. So you have to play in the ecology of all the products that are being built there. And then sort of you go home into the Nest, you go into your car. In the city, Google has been sponsoring for the past 15 years every library, every open data initiative, every cultural event. They're building huge types of cultural hegemony through Google.org. So basically they're in all of these gateways, and so there's no escaping sort of Google in this field. Now this, I think, and with me lots of other people think, this clearly is the vision, and what we are trying to do, or what we want to do, is say, look, these gateways, they should be in public hands. So we cannot allow these gateways to be in the hands of commercial operators. These should be in public hands. And when I say public, I don't really mean old style governments, because they're also quite irrelevant. There's no more need to go through this process of voting every 4 years and to all these people with their talk every evening. So that doesn't make sense anymore. But it's also not making sense to immediately hand over full power and full control to a relatively small amount of American Silicon Valley based companies. So basically also you as a generation, you're going to have to decide. If you're going to choose for convenience, like 99% of people are going to do outside of here, then this is the full reality. If you want to think about maybe Latvia in a particular sense, or the region or Central Europe in a particular way, you have to start thinking about how you want to occupy these gateways and how you want to do that. Because I think the key, what's happening, and that's maybe a bit, I mean, it sounds a bit negative. So whatever happens, I'm very optimistic and very positive, because we can get out of this, but we really have to think about it. Now, if these gateways and all this platform is not in public hands, and it's already going very fast, that means that the gold of the 21st century, which is our data, are now rapidly moving into the hands of players we have no control over. So, for example, let's look at Europe. There are 500 million people. Already half of all the services that we use are in the hands of American over-the-top players. Every day that we use these services, they are getting wiser on our data, but not only that, they will be able to build new aggregated services with that data and play these new services back to us. And this is already happening. For example, we now have AirD&D, which is a service that Airbnb is now doing over people locally dining at home. So you can actually start dining with people at home. It's called AirD&D, Air Dinner Dinner, Dinner Dinner. But the whole point is that 10 to 15% of all that added value in terms of money is still going to Airbnb. So it should be hosted in a local repository. So when we go and now consult cities, basically we tell them you have to have your own cloud. So build your own cloud, build your own Airbnb, build your own Uber sort of services. Because if you don't, you will run into a situation which basically we are running already now. So I'm here, I'm a European taxpayer, I pay my taxes, and I expect the people that are running the show for me to protect my interests. But they're not doing that. Because the only interest that I have is my data, and they are sort of giving that away. So I am going to at one point decide not to pay taxes anymore to these people, because they are no longer able to do anything with that anymore. So already their services are privatized, they have no more agency on law. It's all coming out of Brussels. They have no more agency on all kinds of instruments that are privatized, nor on money that is a euro. So people will begin to worry and wonder if these people are also now then cutting budget after budget after budget, going to crisis after crisis after crisis, also no longer able to make any value, because all the value is made for by this data and is now in the hands of these Silicon Valley players. So Uber is not going to pay for our roads, and Airbnb is not going to pay for our social housing. So if we don't have some kind of system that actually creates some kind of value with all our data of our machines, us and our situations, then yeah, we will be in trouble. We will all be in trouble, because the local situations will just go even more into crisis, because they have no more added value with which they can actually work. Now, the troubling aspect of this is the dynamic pricing, and I've been really worried about that for quite some time now, and it's happening all around us. So if you were able to look at an eBay transaction from the back end, you would see that the price is like fluctuating in milliseconds. So you might want to order some item at 3 o'clock, you get a price, 3:05 you get that price, or something like that. If we now all book a flight to Brussels, we all pay a different price. And this is happening because our identities are no longer really governed by the passport, or by the fact that you are Latvian citizens and I'm a citizen of Holland and have a Dutch passport and live in Belgium. That's becoming quite irrelevant. my identity is actually in the hands of a few companies that are giving me prices based on certain indicators. I have no clue about what kind of algorithms they are using to come up with that price or to come up with that sort of moment that they are offering me. Nobody of us knows how this is being done. Now at the moment this is still in the plane. Why? Because the plane is relatively closed and it's like a fixed amount of seats. And so yes, it's logical that I can start playing with that. But we're closing down the world. So this Internet of Things is basically three things. One is the barcode. So if we take the bottle, there's a barcode, 1974, and we have QR codes, we have radio frequency identification, it's in your passports, in a card that you open the door here with. It's a near-field communication, which is this two-way RFID, which is like if there's an NFC tag on a bottle of Coca-Cola, it has a URL at the end, you put your phone to it, your phone is always on, so it reads the URL, goes to the page, and then Coca-Cola says, that's nice, you are here now because we know you're here because of the beacons in the supermarket or because of the fact that Facebook knows that you are there. And so it will give you a price. So what will happen in about 3 years, maybe sooner, is no more fixed prices. So it's very strange because we've grown up with the fact that we go to the supermarket and then there's things and they have a price. Of course they can change, there can be a coupon on it, there can be a sale on it, or there can be, but there's still a price. And that price is the same for you, for me, for basically everybody. But already here, if you go to the supermarket here in Latvia, I've been told that you already, if you have your card, you get very specific discounts on specific items just for you. So because already through sort of some smart algorithms in the data, this is already sort of happening. So this is also quite logical that this will happen. So you will go with your phone to the supermarket and you put your phone to an item and you get a price, your price. Now this to me is very worrying and I don't want to see this happening because it would mean that we would basically lose all agency, of course. Because if you can no longer set your own prices, you can also no longer set your own wages, or and then the full capability of making decisions on these things are beyond the control of Latvian democracy, are beyond the control of European Commission, whatever, are beyond control of all of us. They're in the hands of a few companies who are very, very clever, having done that. So this is, this I think is the sort of the key. This is what's happening. It's happening very fast. It's happening so fast because the browser, as we know, is also just 22 years old. It's coming from Christmas 1993. So this whole browser, this whole World Wide Web, this whole clickable information structure is barely 22 years old. So again, if you look at old Heidegger there, worried about the machine that's still mechanical, that we can still take apart and put back again. There is no ghost in that machine. There is nothing magical in that machine. It's just the way that it's being built, that we can actually get a little bit more power than from a human hand. This is already worrying Heidegger. And it's like 1950 that he's sort of walking there and sort of worried about that. Imagine if he's worried about that, what we should be worried about. Because we've lost basically all agency. Now again, we haven't really lost all agency yet, but that is sort of one way of looking at it. So what we need to do is to look at these new entities, and this is what we are doing. So we usually, we are very used we all are, to think in these three categories, like citizens, industry, governance. Like I'm a citizen, so I just do my citizen things. I just go consuming, I just go shopping, I just go do whatever I do. I talk with my friends, I get a beer. That's what I do as a citizen. And there's industry, and the industry makes things, and so industry makes things, let them make things, and it's not for me. And this is governance, and so governance, okay, I outsource to these people in Riga or Latvia or Europe in Brussels. And so they give them my vote every 4 years, and then they can sort of do with that whatever they want, and sort of. But this is no longer really okay, and especially not for you, because you're the brightest of your generation. So citizens have a particular set of properties, and industry has a particular set of qualities or properties, and governance has a particular set of qualities. So here you should see in your mind sort of a set of properties, a set of properties, a set of properties. And what we see now is that new entities are being built, and they take like 1 or 2, 3 things from the citizens, a few things from the industry, and a few things from the governance, and then they create these new entities. So these are being formed everywhere, and they're being formed because we have the cheapest ecology of hardware, software, database storage, analytics around. It's actually a crime not to start up now, not to do something, because it's never ever been so cheap to actually make something or do something. So things that are happening on that front are, for example, this I will show in a second, but Bastian Aller, Heidegger. So these are the things that are happening. For example, this is the Things Network, and it just started recently. So 2 months ago, one guy in Amsterdam set up found out that there was this possibility of having these sensors quite cheap, and within 6 weeks he set up this Amsterdam network that's covering Amsterdam fully. And he then set up a Kickstarter, which is also disclosed, I think, yesterday or 2 days ago. And he asked 150,000, and he got about 2,000, so it's working. And the plan is, he had these sensors, these LoRa sensors, but I'll explain in a second. And they were costing 1,200 euros, and they now make them for 200. So for Liepaja, that would mean that with 3 or 4 sensors, you could cover the entire of Liepaja. So let's see him talk.
And open for everyone to use. That's our mission at the Things Network. We are a group of people that is building a global, crowdsourced, open, free Internet of Things data network. New technologies allow for things to connect to the internet without Bluetooth, 3G or Wi-Fi. This technology is called LoRaWAN. It's very battery efficient, so devices can last up to 3 years. It's long range, it has a reach of around 10 kilometers, and it's low bandwidth, ideal for the Internet of Things. The good thing is that this network can be built at a fraction of the cost of traditional mobile data networks. The bandwidth used by LoRaWAN is open, and the network equipment is low cost. In the old world, building such a network was up to large corporations. We built the network ground up, funded by its users. So with a small group of people, it's possible to provide data connectivity for an entire city. It's our mission to support that globally. The city of Amsterdam was covered in 4 weeks, and use cases were built on top of that, starting from the first day. We experienced that contributing to the network by purchasing and installing a $1,200 gateway is still a very big step to contributors. Therefore, we decided to take the production of a $200 gateway in our own hands. That is when we talked to John from product agency Tweetonig.
Hi, I'm John from Tweetonig, and we are a product design agency focused on smart products. Our team has over 10 years of experience in connected devices and getting them to mass production. Over the past 6 months, we worked on LoRaWAN, and then we heard from the Things Network, and of course we were immediately in. Together with the community of the Things Network, we developed 3 products that will offer you to get started with LoRaWAN right away. The first one is the Thing Gateway, and it's a $200 alternative to all these expensive ones. And it will allow everybody to start a hotspot from their homes up to 10 kilometers of LoRaWAN range. The second one is the Things Uno, and it's a development board. based on the Arduino Uno with built-in LoRaWAN connectivity. It allows for very easy prototyping like you used to with the Arduino platform, but now right on the Things network. The third one is the Things Node. And this is actually a remote that has built-in temperature sensoring, motion sensoring, and also light sensoring, and an RGB light and a button, all in a waterproof battery-powered case. This node is perfect for testing all kinds of user cases without ever fiddling around with hardware. After the Kickstarter, we make all our code and designs open source, enabling everybody to make better or cheaper LoRaWAN products, all in the philosophy of the Things network. To make the Things network global, we need everybody's help. That way, when you buy a gateway, we make sure that we update your region so everybody can keep track of our progress. Some of our pledges even contains complete packages. That way universities or governments can unlock a campus or even a whole city. To get you started with LoRaWAN, we even have pledges, including a workshop with one of our community members to teach you how to work with these kind of tools. Together, we can make this. Join us today.
Yay. But the thing is that that this LoRaWAN, for example, Thursday we have a meetup in Ghent. So I run this meetup in Ghent, Internet of Things. So every month or so we people come together around a topic, and the good thing for me is that I see everything that's happening. So basically I will build basically let's see. Well, the nice thing is if you Google the Internet of Things in Latvia, you get my site first. So you get Wikipedia, and then you get this site. So this is the site I built 6 years ago now, in 2009, and that's basically #1 worldwide. So wherever you go, you Google the Internet of Things, you get this site first. So we have like 300 members, lots of partnerships, and if you want to join, very simple, send me an email and a bio and a picture, and you're on it. And so there's a list. There's people with platforms, with products, with things. So if you're really interested in any of this, drop me an email, bio, picture. Then you become a member. There's no money involved in council. Then you become a member and put you on a list. You can also post. And since we set up this consultancy now, which is live, which is hardcore industrial, so it's aimed at doing consultancy on the same level of the McKinseys of this world, with partners that are coming from strong industrial expertise. But I mean that's all nice and interesting, and it is. But of course, then it's all nice to see all these things happening in the worldwide. But then it's more interesting at home, because you can also then stay at home more. So we have a meeting on Thursday, to put this Things network up in Ghent. Now, what do we find out? That Proximus, the Belgian provider, already has set up the masts, of course. So Proximus is now offering this LoRa capability for a price. But actually, it's cost nothing. So we can put up these LoRa masts ourselves, which is need 10 for the whole region of Ghent, and provide all this connectivity for free, because the masts are actually 200 euros. So imagine the enormous amounts of money that the telcos have been making and are still making on this. And so also imagine that if you wouldn't know about this, then you would have to go to Proximus or to the Latvian provider that is already no doubt hanging these LoRa masts in Riga and Liepaja and throughout all Latvia. Whereas actually we can put them up ourselves, or a community of Internet of Things people, or a community of hackers, or any type of bottom-up group. We put them up there themselves. Now I've been looking around a little bit, and there's no group in Riga or in Liepaja, I think. So within 25 miles of Riga, there's no Internet of Things group. So I urge anyone here now, whether you're from Liepaja or not, to set up the Internet of Things Riga group, because somebody else will do it for you. Set up the Internet of Things Liepaja, set up the Internet of Things Riga, but set them up both. If you do that, then you get to see everything, all the people that are really interested in this. So, for example, in Ghent is now, I was quite amazed because we set it up a year and a half ago, and there's already 437 people. Well, they're not all coming, but all the profiles are in there, and some of them are coming. So I get to know all the local businesses, all the local people, all the local geeks that are interested in these things. So again, any one of you, go tonight, set up the Internet of Things Riga or Liepaja, because if you don't, I will do it, and I will claim the Internet of Things Riga, and I will run it. So I think you should run it. Now, just one more thing I'd like to show. And that's so what I do basically. There's a project I work in, Sociotal, which is a European project. Council I keep running every day. It's just posting every day and make sure that it's there. And as you've sort of gathered by now, that I sort of keep this council also running because I want to really understand what is happening. In a way, I still don't understand what's happening. I still don't understand how it's possible that only a very specific type of intelligence, a very specific way of looking at the world was able to conquer the whole planet in under 30, maybe 20, 30 years, and is now even more able to keep sort of up this idea or this fiction that is the way that the world should be. We should all be efficient, optimal, clear, rational beings, and we should definitely not be anything else, because anything else is simply not. It's not good. It's is not within the range of how we should be. So I'm really would like to understand how this is possible. I think is the only comparison you can make is with Genghis Khan, who with 10,000 people took the largest part of the planet. At one point he held the largest part of the land, and he just kept his horses going, and to all the cities that he entered he just said, feed my horses, and if you fed his horses everything would be fine. If you didn't, he would slaughter you basically. That's it. But he didn't touch the cities, didn't touch religion. Actually, he held the first conference on interreligious matters. Sort of, he just picked the best experts in basically anything and took them with him in his sort of tribe. But he left them alone. He didn't do anything strange with them. Sort of, everybody could do whatever they wanted to do. But apart from that, I don't see that there's any type of thing or story that's been able to take the planet globally. So that if I go now to talk about smart societies, I can go to Malaysia, talk about smart Malaysia. I'm part of an expert group on Singapore, Smart IoT Asia. So I talk to the people in Singapore on smart Singapore. I've been advising IoT China, Shanghai for the past 5 years. And if you look in China, what is happening is like this full, total integration of all these things. So I sort of wonder, and that's why I want to keep learning about it, sort of how is this possible? But then also I'm working on the ground with the cities. I'm community manager in Santander and Novi Sad. And we do co-creation workshops with citizens, because you've seen the movie with Wienke, and when he talks about use cases, you see a doorbell ringing and you see a boat with a little bit of water that can text you if things are okay. But actually, if we want this to happen, we don't want smart cities, we want sort of internet of neighborhoods. We want neighborhood platforms where people can also share cars and share tools and do things and sort of and in order for that to be built, we need to get citizens involved. And strangely, the projects that I've been working in with these European smart city projects, not one of the projects, even in 2015, has asked citizens what they would like or what they would want. So in 2015, all the projects are still run by the engineers, and the engineers also think up the use cases. So we do these co-creation workshops, and this is one in Novi Sad, and the methodology has been worked out by Nathalie Stembert. She comes from industrial design in Delft, and she is absolutely brilliant. And she built a methodology to make a use case in under 2 hours. And as you know how long use cases used to be, like it, because people start in all places. But she starts with pictures. So if you're interested in this methodology, this is like this co-creation workshop, and we're doing this here at the table with citizens, people from the city council, local developers, and us doing this project. So she starts with pictures, which already kickstarts the process like fully. She has then written out the whole process, and then she's fab labbed or sort of 3D printed these things. So on this thing could be like a bench or a lantern pole or sort of anything, like if you're in a park, a tree. And so she prints out the city, and then you take the spot where you want to work, and then you say, okay, let's make a smart park or something like that. So you have the tree and a bench and all of that. And then if you want to make things smart, you put a ring around it, and then here you can describe the type of sensors. So this is like an eye, so it's probably a camera, and then there is a mouth, so it's actually something that speaks or listens. So it makes it very easy for people that have no clue what these sensors actually do to actually envisage the interaction that will take place. And then she has so she also thinks about, okay, how do you get this data? Do you get it on a mobile phone? Do you get it on a tablet? Do you get it on a computer? And she writes it all out. And basically through this methodology, we actually got the engineering teams that were basically running it on board. So when I first entered the project, the use cases were already quite defined, and I wanted to do these workshops with the target groups that were already defined in the project. And the engineers and the teams basically said, well, they didn't really want me to do that unless I had done it with them first. So we first did the co-creation workshops with the engineering teams themselves. And this was very, very helpful, because if there's one thing an engineer really believes, is that he or she cannot get any structured input from citizens. That's really sort of, so they don't even start thinking about it. But through this methodology, it was clear that it is possible. So we have a very strong methodology that we need in order to engage with the engineers, in order to have them to realize and see that we need to build this with people and with citizens from the beginning. And this is now happening. So this is basically the work that I've been doing in this project for the past 2 years, is doing these co-creation workshops with developers and citizens and the city council. And it's been really, really helping to define very good use cases, or to prioritize in use cases. Setting up these meetups, and also trying to convince local universities and partners that it was really important for them to set up these meetups. So now we have 5 meetups running in Santander and Novi Sad and Grenoble and Ghent and Guildford, and we have about 1,000 people now already sort of in these meetups that we can learn from and then also identify. Okay, so quickly the last thing I'll show, and then is it's a bit the same as the Things Network. So this is the DAOs project, and I'm project lead for this project. I'm really honored to be that. And what we're doing here is we are building basically our own router. So if you have a router, the router makes a connection with the internet, and it also then sort of takes care of your local home environment. And what the router will do in this Internet of Things is that it will also send back information from the washing machine to the people that make the washing machine. It will send back information from the lamp to, if you have a UE, a smart lamp, then it will also send back information that Philips is collecting on what the other type of devices are doing in the home and send that back. So this router is really a key building block. If you own the router, you own a massive amount of the data ecology. And what DAOS is doing is DAOS takes over the router. So the moment that the internet comes in, we have now it running on certain instances. One is the Raspberry Pi, and where it's running, we already see two things. The internet running with DAOS is faster, but also we've opened up some of the routers, and we see that the antennas are very small, and also the firmware, even if you buy a new router, can be very old. Nobody's really looking into that. So in this home, we needed basically two routers to actually do all the work, and now with DAOS we just need one. So your Raspberry Pi with DAOS on it, a bigger antenna, better Wi-Fi spread in the home, faster internet, plus, and this of course is why we have this DAOS, is DAOS enables you to go down to the network layer to see what is happening in your home. So you can see everything that goes in and that goes out. And then if you would want, you could also shut down your home. Well, that's not what we want. What we actually would want is to start to offer a kind of ecology in the same open source spirit, of course, as basically been going on for a long time, and also this Things network. A kind of building block that says, okay, this Internet of Things is coming, we cannot stop it, because believe me, I've been trying to look at ways to stop it. There's just no way. It's just like air. We're all breathing it. So we can also not be very depressed about it. I mean, imagine being depressed about it. You're going to be depressed for the rest of your life, because this is your world. This is what you're going to grow up in. So, I mean, how can you be sort of, how can you grow up in that world, or sort of go to work and not be a little bit happy, but just be depressed from the start, and also being even more depressed about all the things that are coming? That's just being very, that's not life, to be so negative about the future. I mean, you might as well, what's the point? So the good thing is that it's all doable. So we can all take it over. You can all be part of any position in it. I think yesterday we talked a lot about taking on particular roles. So we have artists now taking over roles as consultants. This, I think, is going to be the key role for artists in the coming years, because we have all the experience about dealing with this, learning to deal with uncertainty, learning to live without sort of real closure, learning to live with all sort of the possibilities. And this is now a skill that is, I would say, not really the real outcome is not really a painting of this now. The real outcome is doing consultancy in a boardroom, or doing consultancy, writing, having some ideas about where companies should go or institutions should go. So basically, I see you as a kind of group of people that is actually going to run the country like in 5 or 10 years or 15 years, and it's perfectly doable if you would want that, but you have to set your mind to it. But it's perfectly doable. And so that is basically another building block. So be on the market hopefully in 5-6 months, but it's probably going to take some time. we want to make a product out of this. So you can simply buy it. You buy DAOs. You buy the DAOs router. The DAOs router talks very naturally to the LoRa things network sort of type of connectivity. There are things like storage I/O. It's the last thing I'll show. That may not be the best example, but there will be others. But this is like decentralized cloud storage. So that you basically use the computer of the people in the room to host your stuff. So all these things are sort of happening. So yes, we have this massive aggregation of data from the Googles and from the Apples and from all of that and from the Facebooks and that. But the fight is not yet fought, because on the other side there is a massive decrease in the price and cost of open source hardware, software, capabilities and all of that, plus huge intelligence on our side. They can start to put together all these building blocks, like from the DAOs router to the cloud storage that you use with your friends, and you then basically your own computer uses a partition of it to be acting as this kind of cloud, which already is happening in the cloud if you do that. So that it's not really a big difference. Together with this Things network that I really urge you to look into, these LoRa masts for €200. And then basically I think then we open up some time for ourselves to try to understand what is happening, and then sort of to at least get to a position of where you can have some agency in doing things about it. So I really mean it. If you are here now, it means that you're quite special, because you go against the grain fully in being here and doing that. So it means you have all the skills in order to take over. You just have to set your mind to it. And this is not a just do it, the Nike slogan. I really mean it. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. And maybe somebody has a question? Some intriguing question? Maybe we have some questions in Facebook, Lana? No? Okay, Rob, thank you very much for the lecture. I think it was very inspiring for people, and now you will fight who will make the first network of things network today or tomorrow. Okay, thank you for coming. And
yeah, thank you. Yes, so you have my email, I guess. So if you want to mail me about these things, just do that. And also, again, really, if you're really interested in these things, send me a bio, few lines and a picture, and you make you part of council and you're on the list, and you can always drop out, but then you get a lot of up-to-date content. So thanks very much for being here. Yeah. It's nice. Yeah, it's very good. So, well, thank you for having me, and I think I'll go and get something to eat, because I'm really going to starve.
yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. Yeah.